I've always tried to have somewhat of a message in my work, and like say you don't want to be a prophet of doom and just do things that are depressing, but at the same time, you my goal is to make people think about what's happening and what with the environment and what are we doing and what are we going to do to help it.
Jonah, you're still young, boy. Jonah, you're still young. You're gonna be a man when your daddy gets done. You're gonna be a man, boy. You're gonna be a man. You got to feed your children the best that you can.
It's been interesting to see this piece evolve from something that was about 5 feet tall to something that's 25 feet tall with a life-size human figure and enormous roses.
I was amazed that he had this vision, like I said, from a small model to the completed piece, which is 25, 26 feet high. The engineering that went into it, the hard work that went into it, to have that much planning and foresight was amazing.
I'm from Southeast Missouri. Yeah, I went to Southeast Missouri University on the GI Bill. Yeah, I got drafted when I was 19, and when I got out of the service, I was lucky enough to study art on the GI Bill. When I first started working, I tried to add a lot, kind of a whimsical humor to the pieces because I wanted people to kind of want to touch the piece and to stand back and hopefully put a smile on their face. But my philosophy on art changed a lot because I think the world has changed so much since I started doing sculpture. I mean, I kind of lost maybe some of the humor in the pieces and started doing pieces that kind of maybe relate a little bit what was happening to the world and in my world. Someone once said that art is basically a counterfeiting of reality, and so I named this piece "Leap of Faith" because it is something we're all doing, and so we're all taking, basically having to take a leap of faith and make a lot of changes in our lives.
Sorry. I've been working with Pat Cochran since the early 90s. First of all, he's a great artist, and he's been a really good friend, and he's a really funny guy.
He's a terrible golfer and he cheats like crazy. I've known Pat for 20 years, a little over 20 years. Never really known what it was he did until this past year. Just never had the opportunity to go down and really see and hang out and watch what was going on. You think of a bronze sculpture or any other kind of sculpture, you don't really know what goes into it, how much work, time, and effort there is.
It is specialized trades. There aren't that many people doing it anymore. I went to work in West Palm and ran across Foundry. I was just driving by when I stopped and met Luis Montoya. I stayed with Luis 3 years and he taught me the process. And then I decided to move to Fort Pierce, and so we built a foundry up here. Basically, we built it to pour our own pieces, and we had other jobs. We were both teaching too. Finally, we got enough business that we just went into it full time, and that's been almost 20 years now. When I moved here, I joined the Art League, and I've been on the board of the Bacchus Gallery for 14 years.
I think that once artists are in an area, they're going to be drawn together. They always seem to find each other. So they kind of congregate, like a flock of birds or something. They're always coming together.
There's something about Fort Pierce that's hard to explain. We're the home of the Highwaymen, African American landscape painters. Certainly everybody knows about A. Beanie Backus. I think there's something in the water here. People do care about their community, and so that's probably one of the reasons that culture has been able to take a root here. And public art is certainly one way that we have of expressing that. So what we do is there's an Art in Public Places committee that is about 15 folks that sit on this council, and we issue a call for artists. And from this piece, for instance, we looked at probably 50 or 60 artists. We came down to 3 finalists that we thought would be appropriate, and then it went, in this case, to the city council. And the 5 members of the city council, then we showed them all 3 maquettes, and again they agreed that this was the selection. So at the end of the day, we've had 25 or 30 people throughout the process involved in the selection of what you'll see in the plaza.
I can only speculate because I'm not really sure why they chose my sculpture. But I think they chose it because it is a unique piece, and they were looking, I think, for something kind of fresh and something that was a little different than what they have, and they wanted something somewhat abstract, but something that would work with the buildings themselves. And I think that maybe mine kind of fit the categories that they were looking for.
He was awarded the project and said he would need some help because it's, I didn't really know the scope, how big it was going to be. And as he explained what the process was going to be, obviously he needed quite a bit of help. There were a good number of people working on it for a long time during the summer.
We've been working 3 months on it, and have actually been 5 of us working on the piece pretty much full time. And it's good, a couple of them had no experience and had lost their jobs, so it was good for me to actually be able to train some people and kind of give them some new skills, and also good for them, to learn some new skills.
He had the whole concept of the piece initially, but I don't know if he had thought how he was actually going to build it until he got the project. So he must have had some ideas.
It's pretty amazing. It's a huge project to work on. This is the biggest bronze piece that Pat's ever put together here at Shade Tree Studio.
We'd started out with a model. The model we're going to use was an actual tree trunk. We cut into sections, made a plaster mold off of each section, made a wax mold off of each plaster, and then we dipped the waxes, cast the bronze, and then you have to put it all back together again.
Well, one interesting aspect about the man was that he was actually a composite of several different people. So it was really fun because we actually had an acquaintance of ours that Pat asked to if he could do a body cast on him. So we actually did a full body cast on this gentleman, and we used that to do the body. Then another man's face seemed to be what Pat was looking for in terms of face. So they made a mold on him, and I got to put them all together and make them one person. And so we really did have to put him together like a Frankenstein. And he just became a kind of an entity in himself. And sometimes he could be pretty spooky. It's almost like he was alive and watching us. But maybe that was just the heat overcoming us. I don't know. Now he looks like... If you get down like this, Pat, and look at him, he looks like Jack Benny. He changes his personality every hour or so.
You think mostly of people, they have an idea and they go in their studio and bang it out and come out 2 days later and bronze sculptures all over the place. But it doesn't work like that. It's a long, involved process.
You first have to start out with the original sculpture, say if it's out of wood or clay. You have to make a mold on it first, and then you have to pour a wax, because you have to start with the wax.
Once we have the wax, we attach runners or sprues for the metal to flow into the piece, and also the wax to leave, and that's why it's called lost wax.
Okay, well this is a piece of the tree trunk in the wax. And in order to get turn it into bronze, you have to put channels
that the bronze can flow through to fill this whole thing and make it into bronze. And the sprues are made, we make the sprues, they look like this. They're long, thin wax rods. Then we add the sprues onto the end of it, and you can see we've bent them. And we add a little cup, like these cups here, onto the top of it.
So then we invest the wax in a silica-based solution, and we use silica sand. And depending on the weight of the piece, like some of these pieces we cast are over 100 pounds each shot. So we put a lot of extra coats, and we spend a week dipping them. The solution we use will pick up detail. Even you can put your thumbprint in the wax, and your thumbprint will be in the bronze. This is called a Zahn cup, which actually checks the viscosity of the liquid. It's very important on the first coat, because if the liquid is too thin, you'll get sand penetration when we put the sand on, and you'll have a sandy texture on the piece.
Once you get it dipped and you get about 10 coats on it, then you melt the wax out of it, and it becomes a hard ceramic shell. It changes color from a yellow orange to a white, and then the next step, you're able to cast the bronze.
We've poured probably a little over a ton of bronze actually now. So the piece is going to weigh approximately 2,500 pounds to 3,000 pounds when it's finished.
The whole process from the plaster mold off of the tree to casting the bronze is just maybe half of it. Because like I said, you've got to reassemble the bronze, weld it back together, then you've got to chase the bronze, get the welds out. There were occasions when I thought that this was never going to work out, because things don't, you reassemble them and they don't fit right back together the way you think they should. But now you're dealing with a piece of metal, and it doesn't bend and conform to what you want it to do that easily. So that part was pretty frustrating.
hottest time of day to be up here.
It's the whole project's been challenging. When you start dealing with this kind of weight and the height we're going up, you're welding on the scaffold, and you're trying to hoist pieces up, and you're constantly forgetting something and going back down the scaffold.
Well, this piece has presented a lot of challenges. First of all, just logistically, how to construct the piece, just the monumental size of it, all being in bronze, the weight, what you have to do to reinforce it on the inside, the things that don't show. I know Pat got an engineer to give him recommendations, but really his plans looked pretty good to begin with. So
We have an infrastructure of stainless steel on the inside of the tree. We have a 6-inch diameter Schedule 40, which is about 1/4 inch thick stainless running all the way up to the base where it forks off. We had to go to 3-inch stainless. We poured the sections of the tree in about 2-foot sections, so we have stainless angle iron and pipe welded to the tree every 2 feet going up. So the tree, the tree and the stainless steel beam become one. So it actually locks in together. So when we pick it up and move it, there's no danger of it, coming apart or any of the welds cracking.
The inside armature of it, which is all stainless steel, some of that was it's like putting a square peg in a round hole. It didn't want to fit through there, and you're trying to line things up and get one piece of stainless welded to another.
in the wax room, the most challenging part definitely has been keeping the pieces in the shape they're supposed to be in. Even though we had air conditioning in the room, you could still leave him nice and propped up at night and come home the next day and he would have sagged over, or whatever you had him sitting on would be imprinted in his back. Or so every day, 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
The heat is a big factor during the summer. It was all outside, just working out in the weather a lot of times, and not just the casting but the grinding and everything else was pretty brutal at times. But everything was, from the get-go, was not light work. We started out with pieces of tree trunk, and it didn't get any lighter from there.
It's been a lot of weekends, and I don't think people understand the time that goes into doing a project like this, because it's every Saturday, Sunday. If even I'm working by myself a lot, but I have to work weekends to get ready, so the guys will can come in on Monday and we can start. So it's been a summer of for me of just hardly any time off.
It was very frustrating at times because I had no idea what he wanted. He did. And I don't think he always expressed it that well. But, and sometimes maybe he didn't know. It's a big leap from a small sculpture, a model, to that huge piece that he's done. So there's probably times when he was doing trial and error, and you would work all day on something and, okay, well, that's not going to work. We're going to have to do something else. Well, doggone it, I just worked all day on this.
So all these things we've sort of learned as we've gone along. And it's been interesting sometimes, it's been challenging sometimes, and it's been entertaining all the time.
The whole project has been a challenge, but it's been very rewarding also as we see it coming together.
I think it's going to be unbelievable when we get it put in place and the scaffolding gets taken away and you can actually see it. I think we ourselves who've been working on this are going to be blown away.
And it's a lot of work, but at the end you've got a real enjoyment of seeing the finished product.
Right now we're finishing the piece. We have all the pieces basically ready to install, and we have it's in 3 or 4 different pieces that we have to install separately. We've just decided that it would be much easier to install those pieces on site and then weld them together down there. It's certainly going to be a relief, but it's been a great job for us, and I think everyone who's worked on it has enjoyed it. but at the same time, it's been very stressful doing the piece. I know that as soon as we install it, that there's going to be a kind of a load off my shoulders, and hopefully it's going to look like I pictured in my mind. I think that when we get the figure on the dive board and the rows, it's all going to tie together, and I think we're really going to be happy with it.
If I was a miner, I'd sing about the mines. Tell you of the women that love you for a time. Love you for a time. Take you to their home. If I was a miner, I'd make them my own. Hey, 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 make them my own. If I was a banker, I'd take a widow's farm. I'd never work on Sunday, and I'd eat my biscuits warm. I'd eat my biscuits warm with some grit from a jar. And if I was a banker, I'd buy me a new car. Hey, 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 buy me a new car. And if I was a preacher, I'd speak the holy word. I'd leave the church to ramble, and I'd congregate with birds. I'd congregate with birds and forget about the rest. You must believe in heaven if you want to build a nest. Hey, 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 wanna build a nest. And if your woman's stubborn and she got cold feet, you take her to the laundromat and roll her in the sheets. And if your woman's trifling and she got no love, you take her to the river and you wash her in the flood. Hey, 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 wash her in the flood. Hey, 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 wash her in the flood. Hey, 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 wash her in the flood.
The great thing about seeing the sculpture installed in the plaza is that it looks as good as I hoped it would. When we created the plaza, we designed it to have a really interesting, powerful piece of sculpture there, and seeing the piece actually installed there is something that is very gratifying for me.
I think I'm going to be really proud of it and have a reason to stop by downtown, or make up a reason to stop by and look at it, and then maybe overhear other people's comments as they walk by and see what they think.
When I got involved in public art, I have to say that the biggest surprise to me is how controversial public art is.
I am concerned about the public reaction to the piece because so many people are struggling right now, and I understand that, and I understand why people would be upset that at this point that the city would be installing a piece of art. But I do think that people really need to understand that we put some people to work. We bought materials and we did things to make this piece that to me anyway is just as important as anyone else's job. And I hope people will look at it that way, that it is important and it put people to work doing the job.
Well, I think art in public places is very important. People think, well, it's fluff, and that's the first place you need to cut back. But really, public art speaks for the city where it is. And whether your industry is tourism or whether you're trying to attract new companies to move from where they are to your town, it's very appealing to these people to see that your town is culturally minded and that you've got something going on there.
I think it makes people think whether the process is long and involved and people try to understand the piece, or if they just walk by and glance at it and form some opinion. Either way, I think it gives them a pause in their own life to reflect on something else that wouldn't happen otherwise. Hopefully it'll be a thoughtful process, but it would be an awful bleak environment without it. Without art, might as well all live in monocolored housing and drive the same car and everything else.
I think that people don't realize how much art and creativity touch their lives every day.
I love to explain what it is to people, and you see the light come on and they understand it right away. Fort Pierce is the oldest city on the Treasure Coast, so we're old and bumped and wrinkled, and we're not the perfect young town we once were. We're mature, and that's what the figure symbolizes: a mature city, warts and all, as I like to say. And he's poised, ready to leap out into space, into the future. The city is. But he's not leaping into an uncertain future. He's about to leap into a bed of 5 very large bronze roses that are right below him. And they symbolize a rosy, in every sense of the word, a bright, rosy future for the city.
Actually, this piece is one of his Roy pieces that he has a whole series of. And Roy is kind of his alter ego. So if he's been upset or depressed through the years, he's done a few of these pieces that, of Roy struggling through some monumental task like rolling his huge ball up this incline, or in this case diving into a bed of roses. And my favorite one is one where Roy is walking the tightrope, and they're always humorous. And they always speak for the human condition, and they're a good indicator of Pat's personality, his sense of humor, and his perspective.
I've had a fairly good response to the series I've done in the last few years, and I think that it's been somewhat accepted, because I think everyone hopefully is realizing what's happening and why we need to change, and if my work can help someone understand that, or just at least make them think about it, and I think it is working. I think people are accepting the work. I've been lucky. I have great support from my wife, who understands what I'm trying to do and why I do it. It's certainly different than a job that you go in every day and on Friday you're going to get a check, because a lot of times you have no idea when you're going to get paid. And I've taught some, and I've held other jobs, but I was never satisfied with anything. And it gets to a point you just have to take a leap of faith, like the sculpture that was part of it, is taking that step and just saying this is what I was meant to be, and this is what I'm going to do.